R has also gotten a lot of adoption because people can use it on their laptop. It makes it real easy to work with and to visualize your data because you're really holding it, right? But there becomes a point when you need to work on a much larger data set. And for example, companies like SQL Server and other technologies have recognized that it's important to bring that capability to a larger data set. And I still wanted to call out, though, that R can be powerful enough to run even millions of rows on, for example, a laptop. But sometimes when you need to scale, the challenge actually is around the RAM. Because R is single core and it runs on it runs in memory, your bottleneck will end up being the RAM. So you could just simply buy a larger machine, right? And that works up to hundreds of gigabytes. But what's becoming more and more common is to use a clustered compute engine. And this is, for example, like Hadoop, right? Or Spark. But what you still need is, for example, RServer. This is one of the options through RStudio. You can download what's called RServer either as open source or as a commercial license. And I just downloaded the RServer. What this gives you is the ability to use shared resources. So, for example, if you have it installed on a larger server, with several hundred gigabytes of RAM, then other people could log in or they could deploy their code into it, and it could run as batch jobs or create reports or even run models and train models and then give the output back. Okay. But I also mentioned big data integration and frameworks. And this is important because this is kind of the direction that analysis tools are going. And another reason why I think it's valuable to invest time in understanding and learning a tool like R or even Python. Because you want to know that whatever you're doing can scale, right? When possible, or when necessary, for sure. So some of the integrations and frameworks that are built on top of R that are getting a lot of attention include H2O. So H2O.ai, I just wanted to call out, is a framework that is treating R as a first-class citizen and really lends itself to machine learning on very large data sets. Okay, and then I mentioned Spark R, which works within the Spark and Hadoop ecosystem by basically, as the diagram shows here, on each worker node, it has RServer running. So then when you're doing this is getting complex, but when you're doing your jobs and they get deployed out to each of the worker nodes, it's just a little R script that's basically running on each of the data sets that's local to that node. So that hopefully gives you an overview and even gives us a couple of minutes to either ask questions or get out of here early. But yeah, why don't we open it up?
Yeah, I must have missed the very beginning because my thing that I downloaded R doesn't look at all. I've got R something, but it doesn't look at all like one you.
Yeah, that's a great question. So
R console. Mine is called R console. Apparently not what you were doing.
No, that's perfect. Okay, I'm glad that you brought that up. So when you go to R project and you download it here, right?
I know I downloaded this a long time ago.
Oh, you might have done a search. So what this gives you is the engine underneath and the code base for it literally is the base code and the base libraries for interpreting the R language, and that's just a console. So if I open up here, I could, man, there's something buggy.
So you're in RStudio, or is that? What were you running your examples for your stock market stuff in?
Yeah, that's RStudio. Yeah,
that's what I'm trying to find out.
Yeah, exactly. So this console, yes, you need this, but then you use an IDE on top of it. So it'll interface with
So you just need
So
one more
I want to
step.
know, how do I get RStudio?
Yeah,
This
you,
is-
you
Exactly.
Just, you already did the first step, so that's the first step, and then you go and get RStudio.
Yeah,
So,
so it-
the console is underneath, you know, the hood,
Yeah,
and then
that's
the
the actual
RStudio
language.
is
Yeah.
The studio is the development
Yep.
environment.
And so now I think you just have to go to RStudio
Yep.
and download that, and then
If you don't have this already, yeah,
but you
just
do
go to
need
this page.
both. Yeah, you need both.
Yeah, that's the one I wanted, is the RStudio.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So that's it.
And the
And
console.
where do you go to download, I mean, I don't have those slides here. Where do you go?
Oh, I'll give out all the slides to everybody. Yeah, they'll be available on the website. But it's rstudio.com, and you can find the download button there.
Okay. Excellent.
.com or is it like .com?
Yeah, and then and so to be more specific to what you're referring to, that console really only gives you the bottom left portion right here, and that's why people use an IDE, just to make it a little bit friendlier to interact with R. Otherwise, you'd have to have everything memorized, or you'd have to write maybe in Notepad all of the code, and then you would come in here and you would source the code, and that would just be outrageous. Which I've done, but I am outrageous. Great question. Any other questions for getting started, or even?
Just what are your top level thoughts on the comparison of R, Python, and Tableau?
Oh, and Tableau. Yeah, good. That's a great question. Unless you want to, yeah. So R and Python are definitely in the same vein, and both have a very strong following. I recommend to a lot of people to learn Python just because it can be so much more universally used, right? For example, you could develop a full stack web framework, obviously using Python. You can also create entire applications just in Python, right? I also like Python because it's well documented when it comes to integrating with APIs, and I still use it quite extensively. But I love R because of the graphics and the graphing capabilities. I also like it because of the libraries for machine learning, and a lot of those, the more cutting edge ones that come out of academics, and the statistics are well vetted in R, much more so than in Python. But Python, you get that false impression that it's much more well adopted by the data science community and the analyst community, just because you are probably also lumping in the number of people who do web development, for example, right? But as a more general purpose language, if you were really going to dive into one language, I think that Python's a smart choice. But that's a great segue into the fact that R is in huge demand, right? And that's why I wanted to give this intro. In fact, nationally speaking, and even locally, there's a lot of requests for R, and for even more fundamentally, the ability to use SQL, right? Or to just be data savvy and to be able to understand data types and to be able to mash them together and derive insights. And so in fact, I want each of you to know that I'll have a free report after, if you'll come talk to me, or if you'll go to this website. This report includes what jobs are hot, and what companies and compensation that people have been trying to attract me with on LinkedIn. Yeah.
So are you with the meetup group or something?
Yeah. And along those same lines, yeah, if you fill this out, this was a part of the Utah Data Science meetup group. We have about 1,000 people who meet together once a month. Not everybody shows up every time, right? I mean, it's more like 100. And they have also taken this survey, and I'll also give you a report on what tools they use here in the Valley.